So I got this engine about a week ago, and I found it on Marketplace. I'm looking for an engine to build. I'm going to take the engine out of Way-Cool Jr. and probably put it in Roscoe because it's an excellent towing motor. And so I'm looking for another engine to build and put in Way-Cool Jr. And I went and looked at this block. It's not exactly what I was wanting. I'm looking for something with 4-bolt mains. This only has 2-bolt mains. And I'm looking at building that engine up around 500 horsepower. So 2-bolt main block is barely going to cut it. If I can get this modified to 4-bolt main cheaply, I may do that. But as it is, the motor was a screaming deal. It came with a lot of extra parts. A lot of them I can't use, but all in all, I do have fun building engines. And so I decided it was worth it to build it. So I'm in the process of tearing this down. I've got pistons here on the floor. I've got everything blown apart right here. I'm getting rid of a bunch of my Cadillac stuff tomorrow, and I don't have room quite yet. Tomorrow I'll have more room to play with this stuff, but today I'm still dealing with the corner of the shop. So I want to show you how to knock out freeze plugs or core plugs. So whenever they cast these blocks out of iron, they use sand molds, and they have to have a way to get the sand out after they cast it. I don't know if you've ever seen the process for how they do sand casting. Really, really cool. But they have to knock all the sand out afterwards. And so they have these holes in the casting where the metal can flow. It supports the sand casting on the inside, and the metal can flow around everything. And then afterwards, they have to take that sand out. And that's how you get your cylinder walls here. And then you've got 2 layers here. You've actually got a hollow section between this wall and this outer wall. And that way coolant can flow through the engine. So anyways, when they're done, they have to plug these up, and they put these plugs in. And people know them as freeze plugs because if your engine block freezes, typically that'll pop out before your block cracks. So they serve more than one purpose. They're for the original casting, but then they're also for protection of your block. But seeing as how I'm going to have this block taken and cleaned, I've got to pop these out. Now, the funny thing about this block, I realized when I bought it, it had a bunch of odd pieces to it. And I realized it's a boat motor. And when I started popping these freeze plugs out, they're brass. So this is a GM Marine 350 with brass freeze plugs, and supposedly the casting's thicker. I think that's just people wishing so on the internet. I don't know. I'll ask the machinist whenever I get there. But anyways, I learned a long time ago how to knock these freeze plugs out, and it's not something that gets taught. You don't want to scratch up the surface around here whenever you pop a freeze plug out, but at the same time, it's not crazy fragile. What I learned is you just take your big flathead screwdriver and you tap it until it goes inside the block. Now, a lot of people would worry about that. They'd want to tilt one side down and one side up. Doesn't matter. I'll show you why. Well, this one's stuck pretty good. Now you can also hammer on this inside here, but sometimes you'll punch through the freeze plug. But if you're lucky, you'll deform the freeze plug a little bit and pull it away from the sides. If I can hit it square. Whenever you're using a hammer, before you swing, focus your eyes on where you're hitting. That'll keep you from hitting your own thumb. Okay, it's starting to go down pretty good on this side now. There we go. So it popped all the way inside. Oh my gosh, how am I going to get that out? Well, easy. You just pull it up sideways like this a little bit. If you have a set of channel locks, that's what you want. I love these Nipexes. I've had these for years, and I've seen on the internet where people swear up and down by Nipexes. I'm a cheap tools guy, but I've tried the Harbor Freight version, and Nipex is the way to go. Look, just levered right out. That's how you get a freeze plug out. Your brass freeze plugs, set them aside separate from the rest of your metal. You get a bucket of brass. You go to scrap your scrap metal. You'll get enough money from your brass alone to pay for the gas to take all the rest of your metal to the scrap yard, just so you know. So on your small block Chevy, you got 2 of these on each side. You've got 2 more core plugs up front here. And then back, I believe there's 2 or 3 more back here. I think you have 2 core plugs and then the cam plug in back. So look for those, knock them out before you take your block to the machinist, because he's, always have machinist clean and magnaflux your block whenever you go to build an engine. The last thing you want to do, and I've had this happen to me, I put an engine together and lo and behold, the block was cracked. I looked it over, didn't see it. It was somewhere in one of the cylinder walls. I put the engine together and it would not stop blowing bubbles in the coolant. I spent a week rebuilding that engine for nothing. And $100 for a gasket set. I did put it back together with stock internals. It was basically a bone stock engine, but still, $100 and a week's worth of time only to fail stinks. Always have your block cleaned, magnafluxed. And this here, taking these plugs out, that'll save you $100. You take your block to your machinist with that stuff still in it, he's going to charge you for his time taking those out. You saw how easy that was. I've just got a few more of those to go, and I'll save myself $100. So here's a little addendum to this. This freeze plug here did not want to come out. As you can see, I ended up pounding out the center of it and hammering on the edge, and that allowed the edge to curl away from the side. I've got some scoring here I'm going to have to clean up. Basically, I'm going to sand that down, and when I go to put the new freeze plug in, I'll put some RTV in there, and that'll seal it up. But that's what I was hoping not to do, was to gouge it. But sometimes you end up with some that are stuck really good. This would not, you can see where I pounded around the inside. I pounded the edges pretty good, and it didn't want to come out. Finally, I pounded it around the inside enough that it punched downward through the inside, and that deformed it enough that when I got on the lip with the hammer, even though I gouged it, it finally collapsed inward, and I was able to pull it out. So they don't all come out easy.